Degree murderers in the United States at least get their handcuffs off in front of a jury, and they certainly are not caged. And all of this for a charge called hooliganism. It sounds comedic here. What actually is it?
Hooliganism is one of these charges that's really liked and used by the Russian government. The other one is a charge called extremism. And basically, there are no laws on the books saying that you can't criticize Putin or that you can't behave in a certain way politically. But there are these laws against hooliganism and against extremism that are used by the government whenever they feel the need to crack down on certain opponents or certain critics. And that's what we've seen happen in this case. So the women performed an anti-Putin punk song in a church and therefore have been charged with being hooligans.
But it harkens me back to the old USSR. Or at least the last days of it, 1991, where this might have been the kind of charge that they would use pretty regularly back then, not now in 2012.
Yeah, but actually even back then, you know, it was formally forbidden to criticize the government, so it was sort of a more honest system. In this case, you formally, you know, rhetorically have democracy and democratic institutions in Russia, but all kind of under the cover of these laws, just like hooliganism, that can be sort of picked up and used whenever the government deems necessary.
So let's talk a little bit about the church, because as I understand it, their hooliganism, according to the allegations, was not necessarily that they were speaking out against President Putin, but that they were doing this kind of action in a church, and that might have been an affront to the religion itself or to the church itself. Is there any connection with this church and President Putin?
Well, that's precisely what the three women were trying to expose. That's what they say they were trying to expose, were the very close ties between the government and between the Russian Orthodox Church. The head of the Russian Orthodox Church, the Patriarch, said last year that Putin was a miracle of God. In the lead up to these very controversial elections that we had here in early March, the presidential elections, he repeatedly came out to support Vladimir Putin. And this is what really upset the women. They emerged as part of this greater protest movement against Putin, and so this particular protest was their way of showing why is the church basically campaigning for a certain candidate.
So back in 2005, there was another really high-profile imprisonment of the billionaire, you'll have to pardon my pronunciation, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, I think his name was, and he was a vocal opponent of President Putin, and he was locked away, and it turns out his sentence ends up being about 12 years. So they got 2 years, he got 12 years. Did they get off lightly in retrospect?
But what's interesting about the two cases is that the first one really, excuse me, shows one of the goals of the first round of Putin's presidency, this attempt to kind of get the very rich people, the oligarchs of Russia, under control and to get rid of any potential political opponents, whereas this trial is really against sort of grassroots dissidents against him.
From what I gather, this is sort of a two-pronged effort by President Putin. Number one, to send messages to protesters out there that this can happen. Number two, to really curry favor with this church. But does he care at all about the outrage that's either in his country or outside his country?
He hasn't shown any sign of outrage yet, and there's even been some talk that it can work to his advantage. These protests that broke out in Russia in December and carried on through the winter and the spring and are due to rise up again soon, Putin came out and blamed them on the U.S. State Department, blamed them on Hillary Clinton. So once you have all these Western stars coming out in support of Pussy Riot and people, you know, rallying all over the world, this can kind of feed into that narrative of, look, well, we told you this was all a plot of the West to bring Russia to her knees.
From the Guardian newspaper, Miriam Elder, thank you very much. Fascinating and enlightening. Do appreciate it.
Thank you.